Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Arthur Turfa. This is my first short story collection, Epiphanies, coming from Alien Buddha Press. It will be launched on Thursday, March 21st on Amazon. I'm going to read a few selections from it and talk a little bit about it. But first, I want to put this in the place where you can see it. Great. I'm excited about this. I'm a poet slash writer. I have 4 books of standalone poetry, 2 books of ekphrastic poetry, and a novel. So this is my first time in this genre. I'd like to read to you from the first from the novella, which is the longest short story. It's called Old Singer, New Songs. When he awoke that morning, Vance Kirst had no idea that his old life would resume 3 decades after fate hit the pause button. For a moment, the former singer-songwriter paused to think if he had forgotten anything. His gray 2009 Saturn Vue, the last year for the model, was roadworthy for a while longer. The 2 guitar cases were snug among the suitcases and bags. It would be a short trip, about a week. One more trip to the bathroom and he would be off. Each time he went up the 4 stairs to the Lenape Inn, Vance thought that someone had come by and made them a little steeper than the time before. At the front door, he smiled at a few of the guests leaving after breakfast for some hiking in the Poconos or antique hunting in the local stores. He had helped with breakfast as usual, grabbed a little something for himself. He favored the lemon muffins if he could find any, and checked the car one last time. As Vance left the bathroom, he saw Melanie Albright, who ran the inn with her husband Steve. She had her graying hair pulled back into a short ponytail, and both hands were full of plates and cups. Heading south soon? My bags are packed and ready to go, Vance told her. Steve came out of the kitchen with a brown bag. Here's something for the road. Don't forget to fill your travel mug with coffee, Vance. He handed him a bag full of some fruit, a bagel or 2, and some cream cheese. Melanie gave him a brief look of disapproval, which he did not notice. Wow, how nice. This will hold me well into Virginia. Thanks so much, Steve. Text me when you get to Newcastle. I hope the concert and everything goes well. Vance smiled, clapped Steve and then Melanie on the back, and stopped to fill his travel mug. Once that was done, he picked up his bag and said, "And away I go. See you in a week or so." He navigated the stairs better going down, then got into his Saturn and took off, giving the horn a quick toot of farewell. Steve stood on the porch and waved goodbye. Melanie had deposited her burden in the kitchen and came outside for a moment. You will talk to him when he returns. It was more of an order than a question. I will, Melanie. The couple stood there for a moment on the wraparound porch of the Victorian house. Coolness lingered in the air as Melanie considered how to phrase her thought. I know you 2 go back a ways, but we could rent out that room of his easily this summer. Melanie had already calculated the ballpark figure in her head, and their eldest daughter would be back from Penn and needed a job. Vance, nearing septuagenarian status, would soon be superfluous. It was time for him to move on. Steve walked back into the Lenape Inn. Who knows? Maybe someone will be at the concert and give him a recording contract. He furrowed his brow for a moment and grew serious. He was so happy to get the offer for the concerts, totally unexpected. It really lifted his spirits. Melanie snorted, lightning does not strike twice. In a quarter hour, Vance was heading south on I-476. which to him was always a green line and the northeast extension of the Pennsylvania Turnpike. Before much longer, he would be at the east-west Turnpike Junction and then head west for I-81. Before sunset, he planned to be at Fort Chiswell, Virginia, intersecting with I-77, and stay at one of the many budget hotels there. Even 10 years ago, he might have driven all the way to Newcastle, South Carolina. These days, he needed to stop for a bathroom break to stretch his legs and to give the stenosis in his lower back a chance to stop bothering him. A leisurely trip south with plenty of time to enjoy the scenery and to think, to remember, and to reflect and play some songs. The next one I'd like to read from is perhaps the most semi-autobiographical story in the book. What is an epiphany, you might wonder? It's a manifestation, a revelation of something that's totally unexpected. You didn't earn it. You didn't prepare for it. It just happens to you. And it's always a good thing. It shows you the way your life's going to go, what you should do, or how it's going to be. It's not scary at all. The next one is called When the Dreams Remain Only Dreams. Steve Peckar's destiny was contained on 2 sheets of 8.5 by 11-inch paper, attached to a bulletin board by several red-tipped pens. More specifically, it was on the second sheet. The first listed the names of the 10 graduate students offered teaching assistantships for the next academic year in the department, listed in alphabetical order. There were no names that began with P. Number 8 on the second sheet, which listed the alternates, was Peckar, Stephen L. The realization hit Steve like a punch in the gut. His only chance of getting a teaching assistantship would be if 8 of the people on the first list did not want to be graduate students in the German department at the prestigious University of California in Berkeley. What am I ever going to do? Steve asked himself as he slowly walked down the hall to the large room containing 20-odd desks reserved for graduate students. The last quarter and a half had been tough in so many ways. Moving across the country to a place where he had never been, straining his relationship with Joni, he counted the days until the university considered him a state resident so he could save on tuition. Through it all, the suspicion gnawed at him every day that he had made a mistake. He hoped, he even prayed for the first time in a long while, that he would get the assistantship and Joni could come out, find any kind of job. The Annenberg School of Journalism at Temple was nationally known, so eventually doors would open for her. However, everything hinged on the assistantship. When Steve reached the office room, officially number 246, he searched for Bill, Carol, or Matthias, his closest friends. They were not there. He passed by a few groups of people chatting. Several were working at their desks, reading or grading papers. A few of them nodded. Most looked away. He overheard part of a conversation. I was in with Professor Seehofer when he stops by to ask if the decision was made on the assistantships. Seehofer tells him they met and his name was mentioned. He says thanks and leaves. Seehofer tells me that he would be deep on the alternate list. Mentioned, all right. Some laughter followed, but abruptly stopped as Steve walked by. He felt his face growing warmer and hoped that he did not look as angry and upset as he felt. Eventually, one of his friends would come by. For now, he moved a few things on his desk in order to look busy. He opened a notebook, grabbed the pen, and looked out of the window at Sproul Plaza below. People were walking in the cool but sunny afternoon. Some of them paused to listen to one of the musicians playing under the trees, especially the bearded lute player who never said a word. This time last year, he was 3,000 miles to the east on Temple University's main campus. To him, it was paradise on earth, especially after 2 years in the branch campus in the suburbs. Steve's parents harbored an unnatural fear of Philadelphia. They came from a small town in the anthracite coal region and carved out a modest but stable middle-class life for them and their 3 children in the suburb in the city of brotherly love. Steve was the youngest and most adventurous. His brother and sister commuted to small colleges. His sister taught 4th grade. His brother worked in the bank. Both married their high school sweethearts and started their own families. Temple's German department was small, a handful of professors and a few adjuncts. Steve had 4 years of the language in high school and academically came alive at Temple, even spending a semester in Marburg. When not in the class, he could be found hanging out on campus or someplace not far away. It was North Philadelphia, after all, enjoying life until he had to head home, usually with a SEPTA, sometimes hitching a ride with friends. Most of his old crowd graduated and found jobs close to home. Some went to study law or medicine locally. He went to California. In fact, he was the first to leave, graduating a semester early because he took some summer courses. That meant he started in Berkeley in January, in the middle of the academic year. In retrospect, not a wise decision. Adventurous, yeah. What now? Number 8 on the damn alternate list. What am I going to do? You'll find out. You'll find out what becomes of Steve Pekar. The next one has a female main character. It's called A Handful of Dirt. It's about a young woman trying to find her way in the world and trying to balance growing up in the country with what the college town and beyond has to offer her. And we have a flashback. The main character is Susanna Jared. 15 years ago, Papa took his 3 grandchildren to the edge of the garden. Mima was at the other end tending her flowers. Now, let me tell y'all something important, he began. Papa stooped down, picked up some dirt from the vegetable patch. Open y'all's hands. Sonny, Dashiell, and Susanna did as he told them. Into their hands, he poured a little of the dirt. The good Lord is not going to make any more of this. Close y'all's hands. They did. One day I will give y'all some of this to own, and y'all will pass it down to your children and grandchildren, just like my papa and daddy did for me. After Susanna parked, she quickly got out of the car. No one locked anything in the country. She was a blur of several shades of brown, her bobbed hair lifting from the collar of her beige pantsuit and cordovan loafers. Quickly, she went up the 5 steps to the wraparound porch. From inside, she heard several voices and sounds of activity from the kitchen and dining room, which intensified when she opened the door and turned right into the dining room. They were all there, waiting for her in various levels of patience. Papa had started off for grace. He insisted that they start promptly at 12:15 p.m., no matter what. No one was exactly sure why, since the time had been enshrined long ago and his word was law. Some claimed that a patriarch or matriarch had died at that time on the 3rd Sunday in May. Whatever the reason, that was the tradition, and nothing else in the world could interfere with that. Not church, a vacation, ball game, or anything, even World War III, as Uncle Wallace repeated every time the topic was raised. And Susanna finds her epiphany in that room at that meal. or in the aftermath of it. I'd like to read to you, we have another female lead character. This one is a pastor in a mainline Protestant denomination. And the title of this short story is called By the Great River. She sat down and wept. She's in a town in southern Illinois, downstate Illinois, by the Mississippi. Shelton, Illinois was not bad at all, but there was no real gym like she was accustomed to. There was a place where you could lift weights and things like that, but there were not many aerobic machines, and since there were no showers, you drove home sweaty. Christine was not a fan of that at all. The town itself was located on bluffs overlooking the Mississippi River. French explorers established Saint-Luc, but it never became more than a small settlement. Coal deposits in the hills 15 miles to the west led to a steel mill being built on the flats right before Abe Lincoln went to the White House. For the next century, smoke rose from the chimneys, and the town prospered. By the next millennium, a smaller mill employed fewer people. On holidays, the streets were filled with cars with out-of-state plates on expensive cars, mainly from Texas, Arizona, Tennessee, or Georgia. St. John's Manse was on Grant Street, with a good view of the river. She hit her stride and reflected on her career, keeping an eye on icy spots. 3 years as an assistant minister in the suburban congregation led by the womanizer, who ended up selling insurance. She declined his offers of what he called a closer working relationship and fled to a 2-point charge a few hours away. His downfall happened halfway through her 8 years there. From a large staff to no staff, she called it. Asher and Judith joined Rachel during that time. Derek's offer to work in HR at the new Target warehouse came at a good time. St. John's was open. Christine's vision of being senior minister in the large involved congregation was not going to become reality anytime soon. She paused for a moment to look at the Mississippi and on the western bank, Missouri. She thought of Psalm 131, by the rivers of Babylon we sat down and wept when we remembered Zion. Her ministry had not been what she expected. Whether the tears in her eyes came from that realization or the cold, she could not tell. From a block or two away, she heard the approaching school bus and turned homeward. The cats were waiting in their usual position by the front door. Christine smiled and took off her hoodie. A few moments later, the 3 young Beckers burst into the hallway. Soon the house was filled with what Christine called holy chaos. In the time before consistory met at 7 o'clock, Christine made sure some homework was done and showed Rachel what to reheat for their dinner. Derek would be home about 6, but Christine had to leave a little bit before. Such is the life of a congregational pastor with husband and 3 kids and a career that's stagnating. The last story was featured last year in Lit Ezine, and I'm quite proud of that. The story is called A Day in the Life of an Adjunct Instructor. And I'll read you the beginning of that. Katrin Powers glanced at her watch and realized she had 10 minutes worth of things to say and only 5 minutes left in class. Frantically, she reminded students to check online for the assignment and emphasized when it was due in the drop box on the class page. I will not accept any hard copy assignments, she reminded the class. See you on Wednesday. Take care and email me if you have a question. But 20 students made ready to leave 139 in Montgomery Hall. Katrin logged out of the computer and began putting things into her briefcase, which she would then place in the long-handled carryall. Dr. Powers, you have a minute. Keona Blakely, a 24-year-old African-American student, was Catherine's best student. I want to ask something about the next assignment. Catherine placed her briefcase in the cart and stood up straight. You sure can, Keona. A tired smile crossed her face. Since the author of the article uses first-person narration, is it all right if I do it in my assignment? Normally, Catherine would have said no to that, but she had been teaching long enough to relent at times. In addition, the author did talk about his own family. Keona could write in the first person and still maintain an academic tone. This time, it'll be good for you to experiment. Go ahead. Keona smiled and nodded, shaking her shoulder-length braids a little. See you, Dr. Powers. Devon Mumford remained standing at his seat along the back wall. Why did you give me a D on the assignment? Catherine felt herself tense. He was a problem student, 2 years out of high school and taking English 102 for the second time. Devon, you are still not addressing the assignment. You were supposed to critique the author's argument, but instead you gave me your opinion on the topic of the article. Your structure is weak and you are still writing in fragments. She walked over to him, pointed to something in the printout of his last submission. Not ever possible. Asked too many times. Here you have no subjects. Fragments again. There was a slight pause. Then Devon looked sideways. That's an opinion, he told her, stressing the last word. The corner of his mouth began to smile, but he maintained his tough guy attitude. Any instructor in the English department would tell you the same thing, Devon. In fact, any instructor at the college would tell you the same thing. Devon picked up his notebook and textbooks and walked out. Catherine made her way past the students entering the classroom for History 201, pulling her cart through the twists and turns of Montgomery. When she was outside, she had a relatively clear path along the lawn towards the Humanities Building, officially Ferguson Office Building. Clear but not direct. Concrete pathways radiated from Montgomery like spokes on the half wheel. The most direct of them did not directly lead across the parking lot to the west door of Ferguson that Catherine used to go down the hall to room 134 where the adjuncts clustered. Once in the parking lot, Catherine had to shift to her left, careful of the cars searching for a parking place and the pedestrians, mainly students. Well, that's a little bit from the stories of Epiphanies. I'm dealing with people whose careers, whose lives are not going as they planned or as they wanted to. Some of them are in various stages of giving up. Some of them they're all really confused. But life has a way of providing some surprises that are good. Not exactly what they expected, but everything turns out okay. This is Epiphanies from Alien Buddha Press, being launched on Amazon on Thursday, March 21st of 2024. If you want a signed copy, please contact me. And if you live in the U.S. or Canada or have an APO address, we can arrange it. I thank you for your time, for your interest. And if you want to Google me and check out my other books of poetry and my novel, feel free to. You take care and be prepared for your own epiphany. Thank you so much.